Welcome to the Career Ready podcast. Learn about resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, and all the things you need to be career ready for the Career Ready Center at College of DuPage. I'm Marisela Morales, your host for today's episode. In addition to learning about resources and the job search process, an important part of being career ready is understanding career pathways. To help us explore the field of American Sign Language interpreting, I have Holly Gaydurgis, an American Sign Language Interpreter Assistant Professor at College of DuPage. Welcome, Holly.
Hello.
Before we get started, can you share a short introduction, or as we like to call it, your elevator pitch?
Sure. I have been in the interpreting field for about 22 years. I started off in deaf education and found my way to sign language interpreting, which I've been doing that whole time. I started at College of DuPage as an adjunct faculty member, and I had been doing that for about 7 years. Adam Wazlewski, the program coordinator who manages both the ASL interpreting program and the ASL language program, reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in doing full-time. I just started full-time last year with the program, which is really exciting because it gives me more time to focus on the program and develop the program in a way that supports our students. So the interpreting program at COD is there to teach students how to use the ASL proficiency that they have gained from the ASL program and apply that knowledge to the field of interpreting.
Excellent. And can you provide an overview of the American Sign Language interpreting field and the various career pathways that it offers?
Sure. So the field of interpreting kind of goes down two paths. The one path is the educational path. A lot of students graduate from our program and go into educational settings to interpret for students K through 12. And that pathway has a little bit more stability because you're going to the same place every day. You have the same deaf student every day. And some people find that stability more interesting to them. On the other hand, we have another path that is toward freelance interpreting, which is great because on that pathway, you can be your own boss. You work with a multitude of agencies, and you also get to interpret in a variety of different jobs. So, for example, you might be interpreting at a medical setting or a legal setting. There's video relay interpreting, video relay service, which is more remote, so you would be online. There's also theatrical interpreting. And then for those that are multilingual, we do have a need for trilingual sign language interpreters. And the trilingual interpreters could be any language. Spanish, of course, is the most requested, but it is something that anyone with any second language wants to add a third could definitely go down that path. Both are really great jobs. And even if you work in education, you can still do some of those other jobs as long as you have the appropriate license. So it's really nice that you can do either kind. And it really depends on your personality and what you feel works best for you. There are other paths as well. So you could be interpreting for an individual that is deaf and uses ASL. But we also have clients that are hard of hearing and may want to receive that sign language in a different way. And then we also have the deaf-blind community who utilizes protactile and tactile interpreting, which is something that you would do learning after you would graduate from our program. There's workshops that are always available for students that are either in the program or have graduated the program and want to learn more. This is a practice profession, which means we're always learning, we're always practicing, always trying to improve. So you really have to be someone that's excited about learning, that's excited about language, and you have to constantly keep up with access rights as inclusion becomes more and more important.
Absolutely. And you had kind of touched on the essentially being multilingual in
Yes.
ASL. And I actually, this was ages ago, but I took an ASL class and I was really surprised that there were different languages in ASL.
Mhm.
That's something that is sort of something that some people may not know, that there are, just as you said, there's Spanish, sign language, and there's Americans. And it's one of those things that you sort of take for granted. And I just think that's amazing. But you had
Yeah.
also kind of touched on theatrical sign language. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What is that?
So theatrical sign language is more just interpreting plays or musicals or concert interpreting. And
Oh,
when you learn the skill of interpreting, you can apply that information to interpreting for theater or plays or anything of that nature. So while we don't specifically teach students how to do theatrical interpreting, they can use the skills that they glean from just being in our program and apply it to a setting like that.
absolutely. Especially probably some of our younger audience members probably. I think of whenever I go to music festivals. I mean, you'll always see individuals at the very front of the stage, interpreting the music, and I had no idea that that was a specific specialization, but it totally makes sense. That's amazing. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for sharing that. That's
sure.
fantastic. And
Mhm.
so, for our next question, what key skills or strengths do students develop while completing the ASL interpreting program, or even after graduating the program?
So they enter the ASL program where they are trying to increase their fluency in ASL. And most students, not all, we do have some second language learners of English, but we just try to develop those skills throughout our interpreting programs. So we work on ASL and English proficiency as they're in our program. Um, One thing that I think many people don't know about is the type of ethical decision making that's required when working as a sign language interpreter. Deaf people, hard of hearing people, deaf-blind people are allowing us into these spaces that, especially if you think about legal settings or medical settings, they're putting a lot of trust in us.
Absolutely.
And so the ethical decision making part of it is really important. RID, which is our nationwide organization that does certification and supports interpreters across the country, has a code of professional conduct that has been established for many years. When students come into my introduction to interpreting and ethics course, obviously our main focus is on that ethical portion. So that's really important, and we do emphasize that throughout the program. And once they get into practicum, which is a capstone course, they get to see that in real life and analyze that and think about what they would do if they were in that situation. So developing those skills of problem solving when they're in a situation is really important. We do spend a lot of time on processing and cognitive ability. When you're simultaneously interpreting, meaning someone is talking and you're signing at the same time, you have to make really quick decisions about how you're going to sign something, which grammatical feature best fits what you're either hearing or what you're seeing from a deaf person. So we do one of our classes that is actually called cognitive processing because it's such a big part of how people interpret. We also spend a lot of time talking about deaf culture and how it varies. So the role of the interpreter is not just to provide access to information, but it's also to cultural mediate between a hearing person and a deaf person. Oftentimes, hearing people have never met a deaf person in real life, so they don't have all the information needed in order for the communication to be, you know, most successful. So as an interpreter, you have to be aware of those differences and make sure that you're mediating between the two. Obviously, we do practical skills. If a deaf person is signing, we have to be able to understand what they're signing and then transfer it over into English and then vice versa. Some people, I think, they don't think about the fact that I have to interpret what the deaf person is saying as well. So it's not just a one-way type of communication. You have to be able to go between both English and ASL. We do also do a lot of critical thinking practice, and we learn how to be professionals and to navigate the field of interpreting. So those are just a few of the things. There's really so much that we do and that we teach. Meaning is probably the number one thing. Being able to understand what someone means is so important to be able to interpret. So we spend a lot of time on analyzing language, analyzing intent, analyzing just how a person is saying and what they're saying, and then what their goal is for that moment of communication.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. You kind of touched on a topic that sort of can lead into the next couple of questions. One of them, or are there specific experiences or opportunities that you recommend for professionals looking to grow into this field? And then how does our program at COD prepare students for careers in ASL interpreting? So I'll start off with the first question that I asked. Are there specific experiences? Because you had mentioned a practicum, but are there other experiences that you would recommend people seek out either independently or through the program that you recommend that they seek out so that they can continue to grow in the field?
Absolutely. The number one thing that our program and the ASL program encourage is to go out into the deaf community. The best way to learn a language is through immersion. So yes, you can come to class and I can teach you this vocabulary, or I can teach you these grammatical structures, but the best way to learn a language is to actually be with people that are using the language natively. So that would be number one. Number two would be, and this may sound odd, but social media is full of influencers, teachers that are deaf. Many people think that just because someone knows sign language that they are qualified to teach it, and that's not necessarily true. We want to make sure that we are learning from deaf people and that we're supporting deaf people in the field, because they don't have the same privileges that hearing people have. And so being able to elevate those people is really important. Obviously, you have to be careful on social media because what you see is not always what is true. But if you know a little bit, if you're looking for some suggestions, there is a long list of actual deaf influencers that are great and are teaching the right things and really want to be able to support people that are learning ASL. Otherwise, there's workshops that you can attend. There's volunteering that you can do in the deaf community. In our practicum, we do have a service learning project. That's one of the requirements. And the students, by the time they get to practicum, are already very familiar with what's happening in the deaf community, and they have a lot of connections that we build for them throughout the program. They go and volunteer. I have some students right now that went to a deaf club to support an event that they were having there, and took some of the responsibility so that the deaf community could enjoy the event instead of having to run the event. I also have a couple of trilingual students that are working on creating a workshop for trilingual interpreters, and that will be happening this summer, and that's really exciting. I've had students go to the learning technology department at COD and volunteer to do some captioning. captioning is very lacking, especially in social media. And so I want my students to understand how important that is. So I have one student working on that. But really, it all comes back to get out there, meet some deaf people, start with that. Look for deaf instructors, not hearing instructors. We want to elevate those people that are native to the language. So those are just a couple of the ones that I would recommend.
I love that. I think that you raise a very good point that it's not just about inviting them to the table, but recognizing that they are the table, they are the community. And I think that it is incredibly important to recognize that. So thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. In terms of how COD prepares students for their careers, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Throughout the program, we do require observations or shadowing opportunities. So the students will go and observe an interpreter in the field. We provide a list of things that they should be looking for as far as vocabulary or grammatical skills, but we also want them to look at logistics. Where is the interpreter sitting? Was it a good seat so that the deaf person could see them, but also how they manage presentations versus small group discussions. So logistics, as far as where they sit and sight lines. Also, they need to be able to see how the interpreter interacts with a hearing person, maybe a hearing person that's never had a deaf person come to whatever event they're hosting. That would be that cultural mediation piece. So students do that regularly throughout the program. We also require them to go to deaf club events, and then also workshops. Our governing body, the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, regularly sponsors different workshops. There are so many available. We send the students as many as we can find, and then they get to choose which one is most interesting to them. And then, of course, practicum is literally in the field with real deaf people in real situations with a mentor, and they get to have that experience. So when they graduate, they know, first of all, how to do it. Second of all, they know which field is most interesting to them because, yes, we're interpreters, but like I said before, maybe you're more interested in medical, maybe you're more interested in secondary education, maybe you're more interested in K through 12. So our practicum allows students to see all those experiences, and then make a decision about what they feel is a best match for them. We have multiple partnerships with school districts in the area and not even just in COD's district because there's so few interpreting programs in the state of Illinois that we have students coming in from McHenry County, from Kane County, DuPage, of course, and then a couple of others. And so we try to partner with different groups across areas that students are living so that we can make sure that they have access to opportunities in their area. And then we also work with leaders in our community, in the deaf community. So interpreters, we recruit for mentoring. And then with the deaf community, we try to stay as connected as possible. We bring in presenters to talk to students about their lived experiences so that when students leave our program, they have a firm grasp as to what their role is and that they not only need to be an ally, but they need to be an accomplice. And I think that is something,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's really important, especially for an underrepresented community.
Hmm.
We are technically making money off of their language. And because of that, we need to be not only giving back, but acting with them. And when they say, we need this, we say, yes, how do we get this? How do we do this for you? How do we support you doing this? So that's really important.
I love that. That is an amazing message to carry to an important community that we so frequently don't give the voice that they deserve. So thank you for doing that. And with regard to any advice that you may have for students or young professionals that are preparing for entering this field, what can you give them? What advice do you have for those individuals?
First and foremost, as I said before, immerse yourself in the deaf community. You can't use someone's language if you don't understand where it comes from. So, and you're not just learning that, you're learning about deaf culture as well. If you don't understand that, then this isn't the field for you. You have to really love language. And I'm not just talking about ASL, but English as well, because you're going between both. And you have to be able to understand both, to be able to glean meaning from both in order to interpret them one way or the other. A lot of students are surprised by the amount of feedback that is given. Again, this is practical skills, and the instructors will look at your work and give feedback based on that. I believe that our faculty and staff are incredibly gracious in the type of feedback they give, in that it's not always the good, nice, you did a great job, but it's constructive in that these are the areas we feel you need to improve on. So if you come to the program, you have to be open to that and willing to listen to experts give you, advice as to what kind of things you need to improve on. Build a network of peers in the deaf community, reach out to the interpreting community, try to find some mentors or people that you look up to, create relationships with them. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I will say that it is not an easy breezy program. It takes 7 years. This has been documented statistically. It takes 7 years to learn a language to the point where you're completely fluent. Our program is very sped up. And so you have to be willing to really put the work in order to get out of it what you want. I tell my students that those that are most successful are the ones that are putting in the most work. They do extra practice, they go to the tutoring center, they go to deaf events even when I'm not requiring it. They go to workshops just because they're curious, because they want to learn more. It is definitely something that you have to really put effort into. As faculty, we put in maximum effort, and if we get that in return, that's when you're going to be the most successful. So take advantage of all the opportunities that we provide. Take advantage of the tutoring center. They're great. All the students, all the tutoring, I guess the people who work there. So the actual tutors are former students of ours. They've all
Oh,
taken our classes. They're all proficient in ASL. About half of them are licensed in the state of Illinois to be interpreting. And it's a great resource. We love them. And they've all taken my classes before, so they know exactly what I'm looking for and what I expect from them. So that's a really great resource that we have. But really, you have to be open-minded and accept the fact that we have privilege that the deaf community doesn't have, and that we're here, we are working for them, and that we are here to support them. We need to listen to the deaf community, understand what their needs are, and then make sure that we're doing our best to support that. I think overall, that's the best thing that you could do if you were in our program.
that is amazing. And I did not even know that we had sign language interpreters as part of the tutoring program. That is amazing.
Mhm.
So, where can interested listeners learn more about the ASL interpreting program at COD?
Well, they can always go to the COD website. If you go to the search bar and type in ASL Interpreting Program, it'll direct you to our page, our department page. Once you get there, you should be able to find myself or Adam Wazlewski. Adam Wazlewski is the program coordinator. If you're looking to get into ASL classes without ever having taken any ASL classes, you can start in ASL 1. If you feel you already have some level of proficiency, Adam will meet with you one-on-one to make sure that you're placed in the correct class. There is an exam, an ASL proficiency exam. It sounds scary. It's really not that intense. That will allow you to get into the interpreting program. So if you've taken ASL somewhere else, let us know. We'll figure out what the best fit is for you. We do accept transfers. So if you took your ASL classes at Harper and you want to, we're one of two interpreting programs in Illinois above the central line. So there's one other school, but it's far away. So we'd love to take all those students that are utilizing ASL courses from other colleges. They're more than welcome to come to us. But check out our website. Right now, we're in the process of changing up our online presence. We're going to try to make some things a little more accessible to people that may not be already a student at College of DuPage. So look out for that. We also have an ASL club at school. Even if you are a beginner, it doesn't matter. Tonight, actually, the ASL club is hosting a game night, and all of our ASL events, club events, are in sign language, so there's no talking allowed. Even if you don't know that much sign language, it's okay. You can still come. Everyone is really nice and completely willing to work with you to make sure that you can participate. It's another way that we can show students what it must be like for a deaf person to go into a space where no one knows sign language. It's a little uncomfortable, and we kind of want to give students that experience as well. And it pushes them to learn, helps them learn. So that's another thing that we offer.
How frequently do you host these types of events?
The ASL Club hosts events at least 3 times a semester.
Excellent.
When we did a workshop, we brought in a deaf person from our community who did a workshop about using your whole body to communicate as opposed to just signs and using your face. That was great. We have the game night that we're doing tonight, and then at the end of the year, the ASL Club hosts an event for students graduating practicum. We're going to get together, and they are all going to perform a song that they have been working on. They are interpreting, so we're inviting people from the deaf community and their friends and family, all the ASL Club members, the alumni, and interpreter mentors that have been supporting our practicum students. So we're doing all of that right before graduation. So at least 3 times in a semester. But again, the community itself out there have events regularly. You could probably find one event a week that you could go to. So there's a lot to do.
That's amazing. And it's like you said, so individuals that would like to learn specifically about this can look up the ASL Club at COD. They can also do their independent research for special events that are being hosted by the deaf community in their surrounding areas. Because as you said, community is incredibly important. Immersing themselves in the community is incredibly important. And so I just want to truly thank you for joining us today. I really do appreciate this valuable insight that you have provided us. And please, if you ever wish to join us again in giving us any updates on this growing and amazing pathway, please let us know. But once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. Great. I'm happy to come. Thank you for inviting me.
With today's episode, there are no listener questions. However, if you have a question, you can submit it to careerpodcast@cod.edu or on social media at COD Career Center. And you may hear the answer in a future episode. Thanks to all our listeners, and special thanks to Holly Gaydurgis for joining the Career Ready podcast. We hope you have a better understanding of the field of American Sign Language interpreting.